All right, and hi everyone, we're live finally. Welcome to episode 0 of On.NET Live. We've been talking about doing something like this for a very long time, and I'm finally glad that we're able to bring some of these stories and some of this content to you. So, really quickly before I introduce my guests, let me just tell you a little bit about what some of the goals are about the show and some of the things that we're thinking about doing. Now, if you're familiar with our .NET show, our on.NET show, which is on YouTube and Channel 9 and some of those other places, we usually talk a lot about like updates that are happening in .NET and product reviews and different packages and all kinds of cool stuff that we could get started with. But what I really want to do is spend some time talking to the community and telling them about the stories and some of the background information about what actually it took for some of these tools and technologies to kind of come into place. Talking to our MVPs and students and like just different folks in the community to really show everyone how diverse and rich the .NET ecosystem actually is. So in doing that, I want to start off episode 0 with one of my favorite projects, right? .NET Interactive. And I have two folks here from the team that are going to join us and talk to us about it. So we have Maria and Diego, both from the .NET Interactive team. Why don't we start with you, Maria? Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what exactly do you do?
Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us, Cecil. I can't believe we are the first show, so we feel honored. So my name is Maria Nakaga, and I am the senior PM who works on .NET Interactive as well as ASP.NET. And the way you can think about .NET Interactive is that we are taking the power of .NET and we're basically unleashing it. We want people to be able to embed it into different places. We want people to know that .NET is flexible in different ways. As we know, .NET is a platform where people can build any app. And we want it to be a platform as well where people can do incredibly wacky things as well. So I will hand it over to Diego, who I've had the pleasure of working with for the past 2 years.
Yeah, hi. I'm Diego. I'm a senior software engineer in the .NET Try team. And I work with Maria and a lot of other nice people where we're trying to really make the classic workflow of a .NET developer really be also a way for them to sketch and explore code and data. So really make everything, break the barrier in front of the compiler and make the whole process way more explorative and iterative. Right. And it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. And so, Diego, I also know you're coming from pretty far away, right? Like me and Maria, we're both on the East Coast of the United States, but why don't you tell folks where you're calling in from right now?
It depends.
It depends.
I'm geographically located in Surrey, so in the countryside south of London, and equidistant between Eric Clapton and David Gilmour.
Oh,
so
really?
I'm in good company. Brian May is close by. Is probably 20 miles.
Okay.
And but I'm originally from Italy, and I moved here quite a few years ago. And one night I had a call to join this lovely team. And why not?
Nice. That's awesome. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of fun with you on this call today, Diego. I'm looking forward to this. So, Maria, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you and this product as one of the first shows that we had on was because I don't know if you remember this, but it was last year. It's Microsoft Build 2019. And you came on stage with us and you talked to us about try.net, and we had an episode, I think it was called A New Way to Learn .NET.
Yeah.
So we had some conversations there about the same product that we're going to talk about today is grown up a little bit over the past year. So we're definitely really interested to see like what that kind of looks like. But before we actually dive into it, I want to ask you a question. I guess on a little bit of a deeper level. What do you think about the landscape today about learning technology? Like how hard do you think it is for new developers to learn new programming languages and just be able to build applications?
Oh, great question. So I think for people who are learning how to code right now, the truth is that it begins online. And it is the responsibility for all of us who are developers, who are building these technologies, who are building these programming languages, whether you are an open source project or whether your programming language being supported and built in a company, to make sure that from the moment someone goes online for the very first time, there's a way for them to interact with code. And like, I'm really glad that you brought that question up, because when I joined DevDiv, which is a developer division at Microsoft 4 years ago, I was tasked with figuring out how to engage the next generation of developers, the newbies in .NET. So I spent close to a year kind of evaluating how other languages and other ecosystems were doing it. And I wrote this paper, right? That was called the Understanding of Millennial paper, like the Millennial Developer paper. I know, incredibly corny. And as a millennial, I'm just like, I don't like labels, but like, it was the one that resonated most with people. And it came with a bunch of suggestions on what Microsoft should do overall to encourage developers. And one of the things that I mentioned was like, .NET needs to have an online experience. And that was the birth, like, lack of a different word, but like the birth of Try.net, which was the opportunity for people to actually run and write C# code in the browser. And .NET Interactive came from that, that 3 paragraphs that I wrote in a paper. And Julia Linson, who's our CVP, was just like, Maria, of all the things that you mentioned, what's the one thing that we should tackle first? And I was like, .NET Try, right? And that was the start of this thing that, 3 years later has become an interactive tool for .NET developers that speaks to iterative development, across different things.
Right. And I know here in Microsoft, and even particularly with the .NET folks, we have docs.microsoft.com, which has tons of reference material and things that we can actually go in and read. And, we have GitHub repos with code that we can download and try out. Yeah. But what I always find is everyone doesn't learn the same way, right? And we can't use the same combination of tools for everyone and expect the same results. Yes. Like, I think about even when I was learning how to program, and I went through a traditional route. Like, I went to university and I had programming classes, and I had a big, thick Java book that was like,
oh, I remember those.
Java 1.5, the rocks one, the big red book. But that's what we did, right? And we went cover to cover, right? Like, there was no Stack Overflow, there was none of this other stuff. And we went through and we started reading and trying out stuff and doing it that way. And even though that's fine and it worked for some of us, everyone can't do that, right? Like, everyone's not going to sit down and read 1,000 pages of programming books just to be able to get started, right? And we can't really expect that. So we have to have these different modalities for folks to be able to try stuff out.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up, because like, just like you and like Diego as well, like, we probably had very traditional theoretical computer science backgrounds of like, you got a book, you wrote down, you did a whole bunch of theories, occasionally you wrote a program for an assignment. But then we think about coding, right? And computing and the way we write code is becoming a part of everybody's life, right? Like, we've reached a point with code where everyone is going to be writing code at one point, the same way all of us do math, but we might not necessarily all be mathematicians, or how all of us, know how to write an essay, but we might not be able to write a book. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we have to encourage is creating developer experiences that meet developers where they are, right? And like, .NET Try was one of those experiences within Microsoft. I think we might have been one of the first. Like, I don't quote me on this, but I think we were one of the first to do this. But we're also seeing it with Fluid, right? Which is from the Office team, and we're also seeing it in code spaces where we have to account for, what devices and are people running applications on, right? Maybe they're on an iPad. Like, let's meet developers on the platforms that they're on, like, and the experiences they expect.
Right.
I don't know if Diego has something to add on this, but
I mean, like you said, there is a different speed and a different way that this kind of knowledge, stays with students. And also, anyway, you made a good point. The ability to manipulate things through code to an extent, from the most complex system to the, making your routine to have a nice movie night, you turn on the TV, you want the lights goes down. It makes very crucial for the next generation to have an easy place when it comes to express algorithm, manipulate state and data, and navigate through those. That now is mostly, some form of querying So it's very important to give a tool that doesn't introduce a strong body with, oh, this 1,000 pages book, or even, a very long list of install these, learn this tool, now learn this tool, now learn this tool, now finally you get to turn on the light. So we need to really give everybody the ability to create their own path from zero to what they need to achieve. Then, of course, it's going to be always the case for people that will want to become pure computer scientists, data scientists. They will go down that path, and that's a different career path. But you see today with, STEAM more than STEM programming school is really bringing together a creative thinking and more kind of an arts with technology, and embed, the science, art, and technology in one flow, one toolbox that kids at this point need to have to progress in life.
Absolutely.
Right, that's true. And I'm just looking over the chat really quickly. And so for those of you that are watching, so we're both available on the Visual Studio Twitch, and we're also streaming live on YouTube. And I'm looking at the Twitch chat right now, and Musical Bookworm here has a comment and says, even for those of us with an unhealthy addiction to books, online code editors make it easy to try new languages without having to download and install tools, frameworks, etc. for everything we want to learn. And I think that's a great point too, because one of the benefits of technology, I think, is also one of the things that makes it difficult. And that's the fact that there's just so many options. There's so many things to do. There's so many things to learn. There's so many things to try out and kind of piece together, which is great because you have options. But then with options now, you have the thought of, well, which ones of these things am I going to pay attention to, right? Because I'm not going to buy books for everything, right? Like, I'm not going to download and install everything. You could, but then you don't have the time, right? Like, we have the real world that we need to interact with, right? And so now we need to be able to make intelligent decisions about what's the right tool for the job. And I know for me, one of the things that makes me adopt or like really pay attention to a project is if I can get in really quickly, get started, read the documentation, understand what's going on. If it's going to take me like a day or two to get set up just to get started, I'm probably not going to stick around much longer, I want to be able to get in really quickly and get out. And I think for me, like, that's one of the things that like I really look forward to. Do you all have that same feeling too?
I absolutely do, because before I became a PM, I was an advocate. And I remember I used to work with students, and this was before .NET was cross-platform and before we had other versions of Visual Studio that run outside of Windows. So I remember going to NYU and I was like, okay, we're going to give away an Xbox to the team that has built the best app using .NET or C#. I'm like, great. And they're really excited by the demo I would give. And then I was like, okay, so go install Visual Studio. If you don't have a Mac, go get Parallels, and then see you tomorrow, and we'll figure it out. And as a result, you have people just lose interest, but you have engaged them, but like the point of entry was just too deep, right? So that's my take on it.
Yeah. So let's do this. We talked a lot about just learning and what it kind of feels like as a new person in the industry today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how we went from Try.net when we spoke about it the last time, and now we're .NET Interactive? Because again, a year has passed, tons of stuff has changed, particularly with reference to the technology. So could you take us from the beginning of Try.net and give us like a really quick overview of like what are we doing today?
Absolutely. So the beginning of Try.net, as I mentioned, was a paper, right? It was 3 paragraphs in a paper. And the first version of Try.net was launched in 2017, September. And it was on docs.microsoft.com. And I want to have a big shout out to Bill Wagner, who has built all the amazing content that has pushed Try.net to the next level. And the goal was, if someone wanted to do a Hello World or learn about a new API or learn how to, math and all these different things within C#, why would you need to install Visual Studio or even download the SDK just to build a console application? And it started with going into the browser, writing lines of code, and seeing it run. And the initial Try.net was built using Azure Container Instances. So it was running in the back end, incredibly expensive. Sometimes it would topple over, and then we'd get like a 911 call from Hanselman saying, it's down, go fix it now. And around the time when we're just like, this is getting really tense for our team to do this all the time, Steve Sanderson and Dan Roth were like, hey, we made Blazor in a hackathon, and I think we were the first adopters. Diego, give me a nod. Like, we were the first adopters of Blazor. We were the first people to put Blazor into production, and we were able to take it from using containers to actually running C# in the browser, which was really exciting because it allowed the docs team to scale more. Because before they're like, could we add more docs with C# with .NET, try.net? And I'll be like, can we afford that? Like, we used to actually have those conversations. Like, we couldn't afford as a team to have more docs. So we had the Blazor experience. And then I was talking to Damian Edwards at an MVP summit, and he approached John Sankara, who's one of our teammates, and Diego. I think we got him on board with this as well. It's like, how can I be successful with just the SDK? Because when you go for workshops as well, because workshops have really low Wi-Fi, no matter if you're using VS Code, it's going to take a while for everyone to get up and running. But getting the SDK was really quick. So we built the .NET Try global tool. And the way you can think about the .NET Try global tool, and that's the one we discussed, Cecil, at Build last year, and that was fresh off the press when we had that, was you could install the SDK, install the .NET Try global tool, point it to a repo, right? And every single repo is a mixture of Markdown and snippets, right? Like, that's usually what your readmes were made up of. But imagine if those readmes were runnable and you actually had interactive workshops where people are reading the content and following along and able to edit the data. And that was the birth of .NET Try. When people started seeing .NET Try, the local version, people were like, this looks a lot like Jupyter. Like, that was one of the biggest things that came up. Like, this reminds us of Jupyter Notebooks. So we are approached by our leadership team, like, hey, we need a .NET story for notebooks. And that was when we built the .NET kernel. And that shipped in November of 2019. Diego and John worked really hard. Within 3 months, they had it up and running and in production, and it's using Azure Synapse. Yeah. And as our experiences grew, we were just like, it's more than just trying now. People are actually using this for interactive experiences. So we had to grow the name up as well. And that's when it became .NET Interactive. Like, that was like a quick of everything.
Right. But it's so great to see it, right? Because when we think about some of these other programming platforms, it's such a normal thing to be able to, again, like, interactively call a method and run a function and just, again, like, try the language in a very, like, intimidating way, right? Like, I don't even need an editor. I could, like, click, and it, and kind of just runs. I really think the Jupyter Notebooks thing is super exciting. But before we get to that, why don't we dive into a demo really quickly? I'd love to see what, like, the docs experience looks like. Maybe we could show that and see how folks, if I don't know if a lot of folks know about it, but we do have try.net in the browser running at docs.microsoft.com, right?
Absolutely. So I will just share my screen and do a quick demo. So let me know. And then if you can see it, like, Cecil just let me.
Screen's up.
Great.
See it.
So if you go to docs.microsoft.com today and you go to one of the quick starts, you'll notice that there's a begin button. When you go through this, like, you're like, okay, this is all these really cool things. And, back in the day, you'd have to copy and paste this. And if you're a new time developer and you've installed .NET for the first time and you do .NET new console application, you'd probably be a little bit confused on where this exactly goes. So we wanted to make this experience really simple. We wanted to take the ceremony away of, like, we don't care about the namespaces, we don't care about any of that. We just want you to concentrate on, the body of the class. So I can copy this over, put it in here, run it, and you'll see a result. We also wanted people to have the flexibility to edit it. So you're just like, oh, what happens if we make this 20, right? What if I added something new, right? Let's say I did, how could I not forget? We also have IntelliSense, right? Like,
That's
so
awesome.
users will get used to the experience right from the get-go. So I could do this, make it D, copy this, and there we go, right? So we also want to provide an editing experience for people as well. So you're getting used to the syntax, you're getting comfortable with the language, and you don't even need to think about the tooling. You don't, because that's just another decision, right? Which can be overwhelming that you can make later.
Right.
And as I mentioned, this is all running in the browser using Blazor.
Right. So then folks today, because this is publicly available, you can go to docs.microsoft.com/.net and you can click on any one of our C# tutorials and you could see how, again, you could interact with, any of these tutorials that are here. You can learn different language features. Again, here you're just trying out some of the basic math functions.
Yep.
But you do it in the browser with IntelliSense, and it's easy, right? Like it's easy to do.
It's super easy to do. So there's another experience, like since I have my screen shared, and let's not shake the demo gods and let's just keep on guys. Is that I also brought up the concept of, what happens when you are doing a workshop, and like you probably do a couple of workshops, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So if we go to .NET Try, actually it might be .NET/samples.
Yes, that's try samples. Here you go. Is it try-samples?
I think so. There we go.
There we go. Got it.
So if you go to .NET Try Samples, it will kind of take you over, what does this interactive local experience that I mentioned? And if you go through the repository, it'll give you everything that you need. It will kind of give you a feel of what it does. But I want to show you, in every single .NET Try sample, you'll notice something that has try enabled. Oh. And what this means is that the .NET Try global tool completely understand what this is. So I'm going to go over to my command line, and this is actually the Windows terminal.
Yeah.
I am going to do .NET Try. Actually, let's do a dir so you can see what's in here. You'll see a docs, and let me go into the docs folder. Right, and you'll see a bunch of README files, right? So those are Markdown files.
Uh-huh.
Let's go back one, and I'm going to type .NET Try. Now, what this is going to do in a few seconds is load the browser, and you're going to be greeted with this book, right? That kind of goes over the lesson and what it's done, and this is on Blink.
Yep.
And you're going to see this box pop up, right? And when I run it, what's happening here is this is all locally on your machine, and you can edit it and you can read along. And you can think of this as a way to get your workshops up and running really, really fast. So what does this look like under the hood? So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to go over to one of my favorite editors.
Visual Studio Code.
Visual Studio Code.
I love VS Code.
VS Code's the best, right? And it's incredibly user-friendly.
Yeah. So does VS Code support for try.net?
No. But I think that is a question that we've been asked a number of times. So if you look at this looks like Markdown that you've seen before. Like you're probably familiar with Markdown, but you'll notice something a little bit different. If you look at this, let me close this up and let me zoom in just a little bit for everybody. You notice that there is a triple tick. Like this is how would usually quote that we have some sort of code block. So we have a code fence, and in this code face, it's saying, hey, the C# in this, it's pointing you to a region, and it's pointing you to a source code, right? Mm-hmm. And if I go over to my source code, and here it is, program.cs. And what was the name of the region again?
It was sequence something. I don't remember. It was something with sequence. Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was generate source sequence.
Generate source sequence. You see it over here? Okay. Yes, there it is. So
Yeah.
query sequence, what it's doing using C# region, it is grabbing this code and dumping it into that code block, which allows you to run it in the browser, giving you a rich local editing experience for your first time developers who might be coming to your workshop for the first time, who might not want to use all the tooling from the get-go.
Right. So let's take a second, and I want to dive like a little bit deeper into like the technology that's powering this, because I think this is extremely interesting. So I'm looking at you doing this demo.
Yep.
You have markdown files next to a C# project, right? And within your code block, you're able to say, hey, Mr. Markdown file, I want you to look in this project. I want you to look in this file in the project, and I want you to look in this region within that file. And this is the code that I want you to insert here. But not only is it inserting here, when you actually execute the try.net CLI tool, it's going to load it up in your browser. And so now it's interactively running that code block that you specified in that code block, like in the browser for you, right? That's what's happening. So you're telling me that you've extended Markdown with .NET, kind of like what we did with Razor. That's kind of what comes to my head when I think about it. I know it's not the same thing. I'm not making promises. That's kind of what it sounds like. It sounds like you and Diego and the rest of your team have extended Markdown and added .NET to it.
We've extended Markdown. Diego, would you agree?
You know what? It is fully compatible as a round trip, and there are a few other things that you can do. Like Maria show you. Can you show the Markdown again?
Absolutely.
Because when you were doing the Markdown preview,
I have my screen shared, and I am going to open up the Markdown. There we go.
And Maria, we do have one person in the chat that's saying, could you please increase your font a little bit bigger?
Absolutely. There we go.
Okay.
So we add a few things to the mix where think about this documentation as a bidirectional things. In all those tags that you see, we are binding a code block, a Markdown region, back to a specific portion in the code. Yes. What the tool is also able to do is to track this relationship between your Markdown and the code, both ways. So Maria was just trying the Markdown, but what if you've got inside that code, in that program.cs, I change stuff.
Yep.
And I want people to go on GitHub to see my Markdown exactly as you would see when you try it out. Yeah. We added, there are a few other things that you can do. And one of the things is that you can publish a documentation. What that will do, it will take this Markdown and it's going to find out if the thing that you wrote, the project behind, compiles, could run, and it's also going and picking out those pieces of code. So now your Markdown has got the code in line. So when somebody goes over to your GitHub repo, they can see the static version of the Markdown, including the code that is actually coming from your production code. It's not that you need to remember, you change your API, you add a few things to the method, you add documentation. Now you got the problem that you don't know when your documentation starts to diverge, or when you have a tutorial. You have done these things many, many times, but you change the code behind, and you have no idea that now the content that you present and the experience, that is mismatched. So this tool is able to track that for you as a CI for documentation if you want. So you can always make sure that the story around your experience is consistent with the runtime experience that the user coming to learn or see you giving the tutorial is going to have.
So for example, I'm just going to change the name of one of these regions, and we introduced something called .NET Try Verify. And I hit that, what you're going to see that it's going through and making sure that your code is actually compiling. Oh, sorry, I did not save. Do that again.
Okay.
Just going through it, and it's noticed, right? So it actually has the ability to check this for you. What I've always found is a great way to make sure that before you hit submit or before you make that push, we're able to have these checks for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
And then I'm looking in the chat too, and we have some questions coming in. So Philip is asking, well, he's saying this is really cool. So in theory, you could use this to run a unit test from within the .md file, right? Question mark. So could you run a unit test from within the Markdown file, I guess is what he's asking.
Well, you can say the content could be a unit test. We actually have one of the experiences, what it means to do test, and you have this tutorial that tells you, I wrote the test for you. Let's write the validation and let's write the code. So when you try running, the test is broken. Now you start doing changes to the code and the test finally succeed. So we got a few of the example that we got is about teaching what it means to do a unit testing. So of course you can run any .NET code pretty much.
Right. So again, going back to the original goal, right? Like this is a great way that folks could learn about unit testing with .NET, right? Learn about .NET and learn about unit testing in .NET, and they could do it within like their editor or within the Markdown file or within this try.NET experience.
Yeah, we've also seen people use .NET Try, this .NET Try experience, as an alternative to having PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
So they would actually be doing a presentation and like, okay, so usually you have a screenshot of like, this is the code. They're actually using .NET Try to say, yeah, this is the code. Here's it running. Here are some edits, and they have entire conversations. Like seeing that video of this, I can't remember where it was. I think he was in Poland, and he did this amazing like 1 hour talk, all using the .NET Try global tool.
Okay.
Alexander too. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Diego. What you were
saying?
Well,
we also had a couple of contributors from Germany that use the tool to really as a mean to give talks instead of PowerPoint, and he actually is the one that contributed back to the tool the published gesture. So the thing that we can now verify and extract code.
Yeah.
Is Alexander from Germany that is using this tool to deliver meetups and this kind of events. No more PowerPoint.
That's cool. So Alexander, if you're watching, thank you so much, man. We all appreciate the work you put in. I'm just popping over back into the chat. Again, we still have questions coming in, so I want to make sure we get to some of these before the next demo. But one of our viewers is asking, so does it only reference code using regions, or could you use a method name instead? The last thing I would want to see in code is a bunch of regions solely for documentation, in which my opinion would just decrease readability. I have an answer to that, but I'll let Maria, you and/or Diego answer that first. Diego, do you want to take that first?
Yeah. So the point to use the region is because we want to be able to narrow down lower than the resolution of a method, because the method might contain a few other things. So when you go down this kind of experience, you are trying to drive somebody to learn a specific aspect. So you might want to go to this block within the method, then skip all this noise and look at this other part. Like imagine when you're learning how to use a machine learning library. So you go a little bit of setup that you don't need the user to see. This is how you do the training, and these are you eval. And then you focus them on those two aspects, and then they can explore. Yeah. Usually these things about the region is not something that we would put in the product code. So usually, as Maria was showing you, there is a baking project. That is not the project building, the link DLL. That's the project that's describing few scenarios that you want the users to see. That's how you use the API. So we will not point that into how distinct is implemented. So if you go through the code of distinct, you will not see any region in there. But there would be some other content created specifically with the goal to be documentation and learning material. And then I'll show you how to use it. That's where the region would be. So they would not pollute the readability of the product code. That would be really a tool for you to create learning material. Right.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that completely, right? This is not for production.
No.
Right? Like this is a learning experience, and it's like creating interactive documentation, interactive workshops. and creating just different learning experiences for folks. So it's definitely not something that I would say, hey, look at this try.net project and learn, like look at the actual code and learn how to build like a web API. I would say run it and then read through the markdown and read through the web page that it generates and explore the code that's inside of it, you know, which is, again, is a little bit of a different perspective as we think about it. Just a couple more questions really quickly. So someone is asking, does it support C# 9? So is there C# 9 support yet in Try.net?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. All right. So no, not yet. And last question I'm going to take before we move on a little bit is, so is this available for C# or is it only available for C# or could I also use it for Q#?
Hello,
so
Philip.
Being like the quantum. What do you say? What'd you say, Diego?
Hello, Philip.
Yeah.
Also, you know the one person who's asked the question.
I know him.
Do you? Okay.
So just for reference, Q# is the language for quantum compute.
Yes.
Developed by Microsoft.
Yes.
And Q# at the moment, we have actually, funny enough, the whole notebook, the Jupyter kind of notebook experience is something that came up after we met with the Q# team, because we had a very similar experience and the problem of how do you learn my tool? My tool is a language. The only way to learn the language is to use it. I cannot leave you alone with building an entire app. Look at this, and especially when it comes to something like quantum computing, it's really about learning the operators and digest that kind of knowledge. So they have a similar approach, which is actually a blend between Jupyter Notebooks that runs unit tests. So they have a very interesting tool that is like a series of kata, which is an in-between the two worlds, like a .NET Try take on Jupyter Notebooks.
But .NET Try as it is right now, the global tool is C# only.
Okay.
F# too.
F# too. Oh, when did that happen? Okay, that like it's nice. I discovered something new today. So yes, those are the two languages supported.
Great. So if anyone's watching and you want to create F# tutorials, F# workshops, like this would be a great thing for you to explore and try it with your different communities.
Yeah, it would also be great for them to contribute if they have the workshops to contribute them back to the .NET Try sample. We're always looking for great content.
Right. So Diego, you did mention Jupyter Notebooks, and I think that would be a good segue into us kind of stepping forward and talking about some additional functionality that's available in .NET Interactive. Yeah. So Maria, I know, again, in the beginning, like you'd mentioned, Jupyter Notebook support. Could you talk to us a little bit about how that works? Because in my head, Jupyter Notebooks is a Python thing, right? Like I do machine learning things and I do it in Python and I do it in notebooks, and that's what it's for.
Actually, I think that's a great question for Diego because he did the bulk of the kernel work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But when it comes to and then again, the segue from .NET Try into the book is that usually in a tutorial or in a learning kind of environment, you have a flow. And into that flow, you are trying to focus the attention on something. While with notebooks, it's more the idea of something like a OneNote, but where you are in this free form of using cell, but this cell could be marked down code, and then can produce rich output. And now you're building like a live document, pretty much. Something that evolves as you go, the evals. And there are tons of very interesting extension to that. So the way we started going into that space is that we had .NET user that they started to ask, can I take advantage of a much more free approach where I'm not bound to complex setup. I don't need to know what the project is. I don't need to know how to install Visual Studio. I would like to just being able to do this in a very simple and sleek UI.
Right.
That's how everything started, and that's where usually the community and the type of user going that path is using this instrument to prototype, to explore.
Yeah.
They don't try you using to communicate or to learn about something. This is where you are trying to navigate or explore data, code, libraries, approaches, and you're trying to build a narrative around code, pretty much.
Right.
And
No, go ahead, Maria. Sorry.
no, please.
I was going to say, so Jupyter Notebooks has this notion of kernels, right? And so you created like a custom version of the kernel, because I think by default, if you just install or run Jupyter, by default, it comes with a Python
Yes, it
experience.
does.
And so you created a custom kernel specifically for .NET that allows you to run C# and F# within that environment.
Absolutely. And like the .NET kernel, when we initially released it, it did ship with multi-language support. So it is both F# and C#. But as of February, we actually extended that now. So the .NET kernel has F#, C#, PowerShell, right?
Oh,
and also some lovely surprises that people would not expect, right? Because when we went in and began this journey of building the .NET kernel, as you know, everything in DevDiv starts with a customer study. Like that is the mantra, like everything we do is our mantra. Right. And when we did this, we talked to .NET customers, we talked to non-.NET customers, and we're just like, if we built this, what would you expect? And what we found was the customers that we did talk to are just like, you know what, I love C#, I don't want to move to anything, or I love S#, but I need my notebook to be multi-language. Like they want to use C# in one cell, right? Yep. F# in another, PowerShell in another. But also, we have to acknowledge that the JavaScript community and the Python community have created a rich set of libraries that make notebooks incredibly successful. So we wanted to be able to tap into that experience. And we're going to show you some lovely surprises. Like I don't want to give too much away because I feel like it's going to be like a grand experience. Like it's going to be like, what? Ooh. Right? But like I will give it over to Diego to kind of go over the experience that we have.
That'd be great. Yeah, let's take a look at some of these Jupyter demos.
Yep, I'm gonna start sharing my screen now.
Okay. And while you're doing that too, we did have someone in the chat asking about ML, and so they're asking this. I think .NET Interactive is a must tool for every machine learning developer in particular, and a great tool for teachers in general.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was a comment that we had in the chat just a little while ago.
I agree with that person.
Me too, 100%.
So what you're looking at now is the classic, is the Jupyter Lab. And like you mentioned, we had added new kernel. And here you could see the list of additional kernel that we bring along. Mm-hmm. But they speak the Jupyter protocols. They're fully interoperable with the ecosystem. And Maria was mentioning about, what the user and the customer feedback. And one of the interesting things is that in this space, they want to use a language as a comfort zone. But the main thing they're going to tell you is that, I like it, but do you have a scatter plot? So this idea of having this fast cycle and a rich output from your code. So the hello world, the main difference is that you do an hello world, you ask a .NET developer an hello world, it's going to go the console right line hello world. You ask it to somebody that is accustomed to use Notebook, is going to try to do a scatter plot. That's the hello world. So, and this is, for example, is what you get out of the box with .NET Interactive. You've got the ability to write C# that you know and love, but F#, PowerShell, and they all have access to way to create. This is actually using Plotly.js as which is a very well-established library for plotting, so that the interaction with the output is quite intuitive, and a lot of user knows how to deal with this. So now to them you've got the power of .NET, loading libraries, all the rich ecosystem of NuGet packages that are out there, but you also got the way to present the information back very quickly. And this is one of the sample, and this is actually running online. So this is when we're talking about how easy it is. Yep. It is as easy as installing a global tool, You don't have to. If you go on our website, we can let you try .NET Interactive, .NET Interactive, to close the loop of products, but you can try them directly online, zero install. And you using the full set of feature.
Yeah.
And you've got all the examples. You can run C#, F#, and PowerShell sample. But where the thing started to shine is that a lot of people gave us feedback in the sense that I like it, I like .NET, I like C#, but I don't use it 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. I like to use PowerShell to do like system kind of operation. Here I'm using PowerShell the same way a Jupyter Notebook user will go and use Bash to download a bunch of files down instead of writing, an HTTP client and then await, get, async, blah, blah, blah. So this is just download the file. I use my C#. I'm gonna import on the fly a package. This is a package is gonna give me a tool very similar to Pandas. So this is the .NET data frames, a way to manipulate and interact with tabular data. I work with that. That's beautiful. I've got very interesting API. Now the problem is I want to plot it. And how am I going to do that? Oh, that's where I know how to use Plotly.js. I've used that before. I want to retain that expertise. So I'm going to jump off to JavaScript. What you're looking at now is a JavaScript cell. And this JavaScript cell is going to consume a variable that is coming from C#, and it's going to try to display that. Because Plotly has got beautiful way to do geomap data, give me subplot, beautiful dashboard, and also animate through that.
Whoa. Stop. Because so you're telling me that this kernel can not only support multiple languages, but you support multiple languages in the same notebook?
No, I can do it in the same cell.
You can do different languages in the same cell?
I told you it was gonna be like.
What are we talking about here? Are you serious?
Well, let's close the loop now. We've done PowerShell to download file. I've done C# to do the data crunching. I love it link.
Okay.
I use JavaScript. I still miss one leg. I need to do HTML. I mean, this thing has to go somewhere, right?
Right.
Let's do HTML. And now let's invoke that function and let's start rendering.
Wow. That's
yeah.
crazy.
And this is now taking advantage of Plotly.js, the full-on API, no wrapping, no adapter between JavaScript and C# or F#, and is scanning through the data using animation, adding the data points, the classic way that a seasoned JavaScript front-end developer will know how to use these libraries, D3.js, all those things to deliver this kind of presentations.
Yep.
This is where I say
it's going to be epic.
This is when I said there is a narrative here. So we built a story. I imported data. I want to talk to you about something,
right?
But we can't really look at the table, right? I would like to talk about this, and then I'm showing you an information, which again, this is fully interactive. I can still go over the data. I can zoom. I can do all the things that I want.
That is amazing. So I know Marie told me that there was going to be some cool stuff here, but I wasn't expecting that at all. Like way exceeding my expectations.
The thing is,
that isn't the cool. There's something cooler coming.
Okay. And people in the chat are really excited too. If you, I know you can't see the chat right now, but people are super excited about this feature.
The thing here is that I have a PhD in computer science. That's why I can play with Lego. And
I love it.
Yeah. So when it's tough, we're gonna start using Lego.
Okay.
As I said, I got PhD. I can do it. It's safe. It's safe.
Nice.
And now what I'm using here is an interesting combination of the whole thing that you've seen. So the thing that you see now, I am connected to a machine. This machine is a PyTorch. Mm-hmm. a PyTop is essentially a Raspberry Pi designed for education. As Maria mentioned, one of the charter was about education. So this thing that you see here on my screen, underneath, who's this guy? Oh, this guy's Bob. So I couldn't use Kevin. So tonight we've got Stuart, Bob, and R2D2.
Nice. What? He's moving too?
Yep.
I've got PhD. So that don't worry. I can do it. I can end it. So now what's happening is this. The code, the everything, the state, the compute runs on that device because I've got things connected to it. I've got LEDs. Actually, let's do that. Let's gonna create a few LEDs and turn them off.
Okay.
And I mentioned that I've got way to do. You've seen that display, right? I was doing plotting. Now, how do you plot a device that's different?
Oh.
Now I am connecting to another machine that is connected to that machine through my machine. So that now we are connecting kernels. That here I've got 3 computers involved. This is a PyTop 4. So this is a Raspberry Pi 4.
Okay.
Talking to a PyTop. But the variables of the PyTop, I built them on my machine using VS Code. I'm using the notebook extension for VS Code Insider.
Okay.
So now at this point, we're going to turn the LED, the green one, on. It's on, and it's on the screen. You can see that this representation.
I think Cecil needs a moment.
Yeah, I need a minute, man.
Okay, I'll give you a moment.
I need to catch my breath for a second because I'm trying to wrap my head around all like this amazingness that I'm looking at. So
right.
All right, so we're looking at the PyTop that's on the ground right now. Well, not on the ground, but in the other camera that's on the side of the screen, right? And it it has like some minions attached to it and some different devices and some LEDs and whatnot. And so now you've remoted into the PyTop and you're running a notebook, or is your notebook on your machine? And then the notebook is remoted into the PyTop. Like, how is that connection happening?
So this notebook is on my machine.
Yeah.
The language PyTop is actually a remote kernel. So my PyTop is running .NET Interactive.
Yeah.
As a kernel.
Mm-hmm.
That I can connect to. So here, this thing is now giving me the productivity of VS Code.
Right.
And I'll show you what I mean, because you see I've got all nice coloring. That's not the only thing I've got. I've got the thing that most of us will expect. I've got IntelliSense.
Nice.
Now, this information that you see is coming from my remote device. This IntelliSense is computing over there. So I can see what variable I've got in there. So if I do this, those are my LEDs, and so on.
Right.
The whole reason of doing this is that we were talking with my son today about when you reversing in your car and it starts beeping and you get closer, beeps more. How does it work? So what we end up doing is that first we build minions, then we build R2D2. Finally, we started thinking about using this object here is an ultrasound sensor. So let's build it. An ultrasound sensor is a tool that measures distances. It's going to emit a signal like a sonar. It's going to blast out a signal and measure how long it takes to come back. And then it's telling you, oh, the thing in front of me is at this point 26 centimeters. And I can preview this one.
Right.
And so this one is telling me what's the distance between the minion and R2D2. Now, here, every block that you see, the green, the yellow, and the red, this is 20 centimeter, 15, 10. Mm-hmm. And he's slightly better one, so the distance from the sensor to the robot is that much.
Right.
And I said, I want to see something that as R2D2 is moving, how do we make LEDs to do that? So that's where Bob come into place. Bob is holding on to 3 LEDs, a green and a yellow and a red. What I'm doing here with him, we were experimenting. So we're going to declare the scan for danger function. So now I just declare a function where this condition, if I go below more than 20 centimeter, yay, just green. 15, bring on the yellow. below 10, oh my, what's good? Too close, back off. So now what we're gonna do is that I'm gonna start reading, and now Bob, hopefully RTD2 doesn't go over Stuart. And as we move closer,
A little bit.
now we're gonna get into, how did I run the function?
So, whoa.
Oh, okay, nice. Don't
And
run
now
out
it's
of
time to back off. No, time to back off. And as we get out of the range, now we're into green zone. As soon as I cross the yellow block, so now we are between the 10 and 15 centimeter. And that's how we started playing with tool. PyTop is a beautiful tool for learning because it's the same things that you know of as a Raspberry Pi, but it's got all these subtle things like you've got connectors that plug into Lego and magnets. So that was really easy here to create for me an experiment that my son was able to think about, play with it. And then after that, really we started building the code, having a way to display on the device. And I mean, that was a nice way to go through a few things. And the code that you see here is really, that's the only thing I built. What does it mean? I built a function that is reading the distance and turning LEDs on. I focused on the task, and I was able to tell this story and modify this function. You know, what happens if I change this one, and so on. So this was one of the main things that we can do with the tool, because at this point this can control a few aspects, because now we're into the space where I cannot run this code on my Windows. My Windows doesn't have GPIO. It doesn't have, I don't have those sensors, so I really need to go onto that compute. And this is all running in there. So if you think about it, it's a very cheap compute with all the power. Even the notebook that I showed you before,
right?
That Jupyter that I was showing you, this is running, sorry, not this one. This one is all running off the Raspberry Pi.
Right, got it.
As you can see, the green LED is still green. So, and all these things are sharing the state. Think about how this opened the power of working together into a prototype. I'm asking you a question, you can come in and you can see state of my application.
Right.
So that opens the door to an experience that really, especially notebook user, the fluid way to go through. Oh, I don't like it. Let me rewrite that cell. I'm going to change the function. I can just go back, change the function, run something else. And these are all okay. We can go through and do things as we want.
Yeah. So I told you it was going to be a pretty epic demo, right?
This was a very epic demo. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us. So I'm looking at this, and so now you're writing again. Like, we have .NET that's already like Markdown enhanced .NET is what I like to call it.
Yep.
And you're now remoted into this Raspberry Pi that's talking to these IoT devices, and we're doing all this cool IoT stuff with .NET and Jupyter notebooks and these devices that are here, which I think is really cool. From a perspective of someone that maybe I haven't spent a lot of time using IoT devices and those types of things, how difficult or how long did it actually take for you to put something like this together?
Yeah. Diego, could you stop sharing your screen for just a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. So repeat your question, Cecil.
Oh, so I was asking Diego, so for someone that doesn't know a lot about IoT and devices and those types of things, how much time did it actually take for you to put that stuff together to connect to the notebook? Because I'm guessing like you have that notebook experience and it gave you that opportunity to kind of play around with things and experiment a little bit more quickly. So do you think that was a benefit for you?
No, I used to use some of these tools, but not all of them. So the path into that it is really open to you. Like one of the way, if you go on the .NET Interactive website, we give you all possible path into using the tool. Yeah. Some of the users, they come where they've got a Jupyter install available. They want to start using our languages, and this is very close to the experience that Maria was showing you. You install the global tool, and now the C#, F#, and PowerShell kernel are available to you in the in your Jupyter notebook.
Yeah, and if people want to learn more, like about what we've done here, it's all on our repo, which is .NET/interactive. And for anything that is try.net, it is .NET/try.
Awesome. And then also too, I gotta talk to you after this because I might need to get one of those PyTop devices because that looks. I have my developer juices are pumping right now. I kind of want to try it out.
Yeah.
It's easy to open to everybody path into using this tool. That people that are gonna like to use this one to create more. Think about going back to the STEAM and STEM experience, right?
Right.
Who's a little bit more hands-on is gonna navigate through this by plugging lights and sensors. So it's gonna have a much more maker kind of cut to that. Yeah. The one more into the machine learning, they've got the fact that they can load ML.NET, whatever they want. They got access to all that thing because we support loading dynamically NuGet packages. So you just get what you need as you go.
Yeah.
And then you just free form into in our repo, you can go and see they can experiment live with Housing ML is a classic, example on leveraging machine learning to inspect housing data, housing data set with visualization and ML.NET and the data frame library. So it's a very good experience to understand what the workload of a data scientist and machine learning developer looks like in this ecosystem.
Absolutely. And as Diego mentioned earlier, if you go to the .NET Interactive repo, you will see a badge that says binder. So you click on that, and what it will do is it will load the notebook for you all in a binder. This is running in a Docker container. So go ahead and try it out. The COVID one won't work because it's actually making requests. So that won't work, but everything else will work online. So it gives you an opportunity to go and experiment, learn more about our features, and also learn some of the samples that Diego was describing as well.
Right. Awesome. And oh wow, like I'm looking on Twitch right now, and we just got rated by 130 people. So 130 people just joined the chat. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. We're actually coming down to the end of our show, to be honest with you. But I mean, thank you, Jeff, for bringing all these wonderful folks over here to come talk to us. We're talking with Maria and Diego from the .NET Interactive team, and they just showed us an amazing demo of using a PyTop and connecting it with Jupyter notebooks and doing some really interesting IoT work. So we're going to start wrapping up right now. So the last thing that I want us to cover really is again, like you showed us the demo. We know folks know where to go. Are there any interesting use cases outside of Microsoft that you could tell us about, like outside of Docs, where are people using, .NET Interactive?
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of Docs, you'll also see us in Azure Synapse. So Azure Synapse has a concept of notebooks, and their .NET notebooks are all using .NET Interactive. Actually, that was one of the projects that kind of spearheaded us in that direction because they needed .NET support. So they were our first customers for the .NET kernel. We're also working with the Azure Data Studio team, so they can use .NET support for their notebooks. So if you use Azure Data Studios and you want C#, F# or PowerShell support, we're working with them to do that. We've been having mini hackathons, and they're actually hoping to bring the SQL kernel into .NET Interactive. So .NET Interactive will have SQL, PowerShell, F#, C#, as you saw, a flavor of JavaScript and HTML. So it's going to be a really rich polyglot experience.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, hey, thank you both for coming on. Again, this was episode 0 of On.NET Live. I'm really glad that both of you were able to join us for this experience. The demo was amazing. I'm looking in the chat, and all the folks that were here before, they definitely loved it. Lots of questions about ML and, Diego, I don't know what you started, man, but a lot of people are asking about Q Sharp now since we talked about it earlier. So I don't know, you might need to make that happen. That might have to be a thing. But anyway, again, thank you all for watching us. One thing I did want to mention before I forget, and I don't want Beth to get mad at me, .NET Conf is next week. So next week on July 30th, we're going to have tons of great folks doing presentations around microservices and .NET. Brendan Burns will be there. David Fowler will be there. Brianna Loving is going to be there. Julie Lerman, Javier, tons of folks are going to be there. Make sure you come. Make sure you check it out. If you want to share this video with your friends or anyone, people have been asking. There will be a recording available. So if you didn't get to see the whole thing, you want to see from the beginning or the end, or you want to share it with someone, we will have a recording available on the .NET YouTube channel. So I'd recommend you go over and hit the subscribe button on the .NET YouTube channel if you want to watch it later. And other than that, if you want to reach out to Maria or Diego, they're both on Twitter. So feel free to reach out to them and ask them any questions you might have about the .NET Interactive experience. So thank you all again. We appreciate it. Thank you for spending like the past hour with us learning about this too. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for having us.